So good evening, everyone. We have spoken at length, in terms of how different fiscal and financial instruments can be used for kind of promoting India's energy and energy transition goal. I'll now quickly take you through some of, how the investment trends have changed over the years. So as we've seen that India is making progress on its decarbonization pathway, where more clean energy is being deployed. Various drivers have led to this change, whether it's international or national commitment, wherein India has committed to kind of 40% capacity of non-fossil fuel energy by 2030. India is blessed with some of the states having vast RE potential, also cost economics now, given that RE is cheaper than the conventional thermal capacity, that is also kind of driving more and more deployment of renewable energy. And more also, one of the big driver is, I would say, access to both national and global capital, which is driving this change. So just quickly, if we look at how the capacity mix is changing over time, so till about 2015-16, coal was dominating the new capacity adds. 2016 onwards, India's renewable sector has grown significantly, with renewable energy now currently at around 90 gigawatt as of date, with its share in total installed capacity being around 24%, and in terms of generation, it is around 9 to 10%. There has been a drastic slowdown in the new capacity construction, in the country's troubled thermal power generation sector, particularly where, these capacities were based on either imported coal or gas. The share of renewable energy capacity has been increasing, and delivering about two-thirds of India's new capacity addition during fiscal year 2019-20. Ideally, we would want the share to increase to about 90% in the coming next 1 or 2 years or so, and eventually all the new capacity addition being coming from renewable energy, so 100%. That should be the kind of a goal that we would see in order to achieve our Paris Agreement target, or to restrict global temperatures to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Now, to achieve this, central government's ambitious target of, which is 450 gigawatt by 2030, requires, capacity installation of 35 to 36 gigawatt annually. This in turn, would require further capital flow from both Indian and international investors. Next slide. If we look at 2019 and 2020 investment trends, so, on the left side, we have investments by the deal type. In 2019, it shows that, the investments in the renewable energy generation during 2019 total around, 8.4 billion US dollars. And in 2020, from April to November period, it has slowed down drastically on account of COVID-19 pandemic, leading to, in general, the economic slowdown and also the market disruption. So in the last few months, it has started picking up, but not to the extent that we saw, in year 2018-19 or 2019-20. In 2019, the majority of the biggest, the deals were packaged as, largely equity investments, followed by green bonds, and then mergers and acquisition, and to some extent, initial public offering as well, IPOs. And over 63% of these capital investments were in 5 renewable companies, largely the Green Co Energy Holdings, Renew Power, Adani Green, Sterling and Wilson. So these were the big renewable energy companies which attracted a lot of investment. And if you look at from who were the biggest 5 investors, and they contributed about 46% of the total investment flow in 2019, they were, the GIC, the General Insurance Corporation, and Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, Temasek, Total also contributed or directed a lot of investments to RE in the year 2019, and Shapoorji Pallonji. So the market is kind of being concentrated by a few big players. If you look at 2020, the deal type has now shifted. The deals which happened this year were largely being M&As. So mergers and acquisition were largely the way in which investment flowed in 2020, followed by green bonds, about 25% of the total investment. And a very small proportion of investments were in the form of debt and equity. The biggest investors this year has been Global Infrastructure Partners, Ayana Renewable, and Adani Green. So all these investments are, acquisition of projects of other developers largely. So this year we have seen a lot of M&A happening. Next slide. If you look at the sectors, where the investments were going. So in 2019, almost half of the total investment was for generalized renewable energy, while 40% were targeted to the solar sector and 10% to the wind. And only 1% of the total investment during 2019 was for storage or for solar pump. In comparison, in 2020, a little over half of this investment is for the solar sector, 16% for the wind, and another 26% is for the diversified portfolio, which kind of includes both wind and solar. Yeah. So, subsidies. Now I'll talk about subsidies, which kind of play an important role in shaping India's energy mix. So, subsidies is a fiscal tool that can help drive positive changes. So, they can help consumers afford modern energy, bring down the cost of new technologies, and also encourage investors to take risk in the new markets. But if subsidies are poorly designed, it will encourage, public ills rather than, public goods. So despite they have well-intended policy outcomes, so it's very critical that the subsidies are properly designed. However, the subsidies are often expensive. They may achieve their objectives, but it could be inefficient. So taking up, scarce resources at large opportunity, which has kind of large opportunity costs. They can also encourage, the wasteful use of energy. In particular, subsidies for fossil fuels increase consumption, driving up, air pollution and carbon emissions, while crowding out kind of investments in renewable energy and energy efficiency. So this is why, we saw around, 193 countries having committed to fossil fuel subsidy reforms as part of their SDG goal, and make, have responsible consumption and production decisions. So for, I mean, if we look at the quantum of subsidies in 2019, it amounted to around 1.74 lakh crores. So electricity subsidies have grown steadily and, become the largest recipient of the total energy subsidy. So if you look at the overall quantum, so it's the electricity subsidies which has the largest share, followed by oil and gas subsidies. If you look at from the period of 2014 till now, till 2019, so subsidies fell from, about 75% from in the period financial 2014 to 2017, which was largely driven by, low world oil prices and, subsidy reforms for petrol, diesel, LPG, and kerosene. Then we saw a rise again in financial year 2019, which was largely due to, higher world oil prices and government program of promoting more and more use of subsidized LPG. So the trends are will be very different for financial year 2021, because as global oil prices has hit another new low this year, so the subsidies are likely to go down for oil and gas sectors, with prices hitting, as I said, a new low. But for electricity subsidies, given the inability by the discoms to recover costs on account of, COVID-19 difficulties, disbursement of subsidies to electricity sector is likely to be much larger. And we have already seen that the government has provided rupees 1.2 lakh crore package being given to discoms for payment to generators. So this is over and above the electricity subsidies by various states on account of non-recovery of tariff. So subsidies to electricity sector is gonna be huge this year. If you look at coal subsidies, in India, it's remained largely unchanged during over the years. RE subsidies, in fact, has seen a reversal of trends. It kind of rose almost fivefold from financial year 2014, but they fell, by 35% in financial year 2017 to 19. And this is primarily because RE is now much more cheaper. So with the same amount of investment or the same amount of funds, we were able to deploy more and more RE with the same amount of money. And it was competitive on its own, and we did not require direct budgetary supports as such for RE deployment. EV subsidies are gaining momentum. So we are seeing more and more subsidies to the EV sector. Next slide. Um, if you look at 2014 to 2019 period, so fossil fuel subsidies have fallen by more than half. As I said, largely driven by falling world oil prices and the reforms that were taken in diesel and kerosene pricing. Subsidies to RE and EVs have increased over 3.5 times, largely due to, again, policy efforts to meet the capacity targets. But if you aggregate all the subsidies to fossil fuels versus renewable energy, so support to fossil fuels is still 7 times bigger than RE in the year 2019. So clearly, more needs to be done in terms of government support for transitioning to clean energy. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah, thanks. So, as I said, while subsidies are an important fiscal tool, they are regressive. So they end up benefiting, rich more than the poor. Government in India has increased consumption subsidies, by underpricing of electricity or by providing subsidies for clean fuel like LPG consumption. However, the evidence suggests that those are not well targeted. So the government does, have to work with social protection agencies to design and test these mechanisms to target, assistance without harming the goal of energy access. These subsidies, can be targeted through mechanisms like direct benefit transfers to poor consumers, and the other consumers can be charged cost reflective price. There could be other subsidy design mechanisms that can be explored to improve targeting as well. Next slide. We did touch upon, on these climate net zero targets being announced by various countries, including corporates. So globally, as well as in India, we are seeing the change in interest. The coal pipeline is dwindling. Big companies like NTPC, Tata, Reliance, and even the coal-rich states like Chhattisgarh, and the states like Gujarat, Maharashtra, all these have said no to new coal. In fact, CIL has been mandated by the Ministry of Coal to become a net zero company, and solar power initiative is, kind of a part of CIL's diversification plan. CIL has kind of agreed to develop about 3 gigawatt of coal capacity by 2024. In fact, Indian Railways is also very much on track to, achieve net zero emissions by 2030. Even corporates are joining this greater ambition of climate goal. Corporates like Infosys, Dalmia Cement, Mahindra, and Tata Motors, which are Indian headquartered companies that have voluntarily adopted 100% renewable electricity consumption targets by joining the Climate Group and CDP's RE100 initiative. Additionally, there are about other international RE100 companies that have presence in India and are moving their operations to renewable energy. And all this is being accelerated and kind of made possible as we are seeing the solar prices kind of plummeting and reaching to a new low of rupees 2 per kilowatt hour. And one of the reasons has been of such low tariffs has been on account of access to low cost global capital. So clearly, India can accelerate energy transition, if it is able to access domestic as well as global capital in the coming years. Next slide. So, while the investment in the clean energy has gone up, the gap still exists. So, India currently gets investments of about 10 to 11 billion for renewable energy annually. This year has been, as I said, we have suffered a little setback in terms of less investment, but that's temporary. So, what we need is, an upward $30 billion to achieve annual capacity addition of, to achieve 36 gigawatt annual capacity addition. So with the decreasing cost of debt and solar module prices, it is an opportune time for the government of India to kind of accelerate the energy transition through better regulation and policy definition in the power sector. We have talked about, how one needs to kind of reduce this off-taker risk by ensuring discoms both on the contracts as well as make payments to generators. Policy certainty, as I said, would be critical, and exploring innovative financial solutions to attract more funds will enable to achieve this kind of an objective. I would just end by saying that there is large opportunity and huge investment flow is required in both existing as well as new clean technologies. So what we need is an RE plus kind of an approach where investments also flow to make this infirm power more firm power, so that the pace of decarbonization can be accelerated. Thank you.